You're listening to a Meatsmith Harvest. This is the podcast that encourages and equips you to grow your home around the harvest. Welcome, Meatsmiths. This dialogue picks up where we left off in our last episode's conversation. You can find part 1 on our website, YouTube, or iTunes. If the content resonates with you, please consider supporting our team by going to patreon.com/Meatsmith and donating a small monthly pledge. This goes directly toward more free media headed your way. Thanks for staying tuned for part 2. Okay, let's talk about slaughter.
Okay.
How do you go about slaughtering a beef cow?
Yeah, so beef are in the cornucopia of livestock that we eat. They're probably the simplest when it comes to the kill. Just the kill. Thereafter, it's a lot of work, and because they're so huge and heavy. But they are very docile animals. Mm-hmm. And unlike pigs, their heads aren't low to the ground and in constant motion. They move slowly. And so if I slaughter beef, I ask that they be penned, and in a tight area, so that because sometimes the beef do have a very large flight distance, particularly ones that are grown way out on pasture that maybe only see a human when they're chucking hay from a truck once a week, very rarely. Those cows are basically wild, and so they will stay very far away from you. And so I've definitely had situations where I pull up to a farm, 10 acres or more, and we throw out hay, and the cows come to get it, and I start walking up with my gun, calmly, quietly, and all heads go up. They look at me with their ears.
Is this newbie?
Yeah, one goes up, and then all the others go up.
Yeah.
And they look at me straight on, and
your heart goes pitter-patter at that
and
point.
I'm just like, oh. Because that's the flight distance. Like, they've just sensed I'm too close for comfort, and I'm still like 20 yards away.
Yeah.
And they all walk back. They all walk away. Uh-huh. And it's like, to keep that 20-yard
you feel like
distance.
You've already lost. Yeah.
And if I once that happens, once you begin that game, and they take that first step back to get their distance, if you follow them up trying to close the distance, guess what you're doing now? You're chasing them.
Yeah.
So that means that every time they walk away from you, it's going to be further and their flight distance will increase gradually.
Yeah.
You're screwed. It's horrible. It's not good. Yeah. They'll just keep getting further and further away from you. Uh-huh. And you can try to, and then you think, okay, I know, there's bushes there. we'll feed them next to the bushes. I'll sneak up, and it's like, great. Now you're going to startle them.
Yeah.
They love that. And before you know it, like, their flight distance is 8 acres.
Yeah.
It's just,
it's
so you have to really you kind of have to play their game, and pen them up while they're calm.
Yeah, Americans really need to learn this too. Maybe West Coast Americans, because I've looked like
new farmers.
That's what I mean.
It's not obvious.
Yeah,
because you're hand feeding your cows. Like when you first get them, like, yes. Oh no, they're sweethearts. I can walk right up.
Right.
And I'll even visit the farm beforehand and be like, yeah, I can pet them. See, they're fine.
Yeah. No.
You can't. You have to plan for the worst case scenario.
Yeah.
And
penning them is very important.
Yeah.
Other countries, I think, get this. They have pastures that are already rigged up for it.
Yeah, so, just older farms that have been around for a while.
Barns with chutes.
In the corner of every one, there's a kill pen.
Yeah.
And it's smaller. It's it could be 20 by 30 or 30 by 30, something like that.
You've shot them in like trailers before.
Yes, trailers are great.
If you can back your cow up into a trailer.
Yeah.
So pen them up.
A good stout one.
Because if you don't do that, then what you're in the kind of situation is, that's why American slaughtermen, they have rifles with scopes on them. Because they're basically hunting these animals now.
Yeah.
It changes the whole dynamic.
It does.
And that's a different skill.
Yeah.
That And if you don't have that, you almost feel like you're ill-equipped,
Mm-hmm.
which it shouldn't be the case because you're not. You're a professional slaughterman. You know how to like process this animal,
Mm-hmm.
but it's just that shot that you can't get if you're
20 yards away.
Yeah. If you don't
Yeah,
have a
I
scope.
like to keep it close and comfortable.
Yeah.
With iron sights.
Yeah.
And I just haven't invested in a scope because I feel like if we do go the scope method, then we can kill. We're almost obligated to say yes, we can kill beef without a kill pen at 50 yards, like no problem.
Yeah, exactly.
And I don't want to go there.
Yeah,
I
that's
like
true.
the close.
Yeah.
So usually that's very rare. Usually, my slaughters are tiny herds, maybe like 2.
Yeah,
or
2 in
3.
a day. You can't do more than that.
Yeah. And I can't really fit that much more in my walk-in, actually.
true,
4
yeah.
quarters, and we're packed. Or
Yeah.
8 quarters. And so usually the cows are they're tightly penned and they're docile.
Yeah.
And I can drop them right there. And the thing is, you just wait. You wait for the good shot. And I'll be the first to confess, I have jumped the gun, as it were, and shot when I ought not. And it's horrible. You can't underestimate the dire consequences of that single moment of miscalculation, of impatience. And which is the only reason I know how important it is to wait now.
Yeah.
Because I have been through it.
Yeah.
And so you just wait until it's perfect, which is to say, what that means, you got to take it all the way out to the end, right? If it isn't perfect, go home.
Yeah. If
If you can't get the shot, call it a day and reschedule. And
tell them to get the
maybe, a stouter, whatever mitigating circumstance there is preventing the good shot. Get that fixed.
Yeah.
And then we'll come back and we'll do this.
Don't force it.
Yeah, don't force it. So that's the worst case scenario. Usually I pull up and it's I stay outside the fence. I'm not going to get in there with the cows. The moment, and this pretty much applies to especially pigs, once you get into their territory, they're excited. They're probably not scared, but they're excited. A little more motion, a little more excitement. Cows are cute. They'll frolic, and it's a thing to behold when a 1,200-pound animal is frolicking like a little lamb. But they'll do it. They'll get excited. And to avoid all of that excess movement, I just stand just outside the fence. And cattle fences, usually, hopefully, are nice and tall. So it's just perfect for bench resting your gun up there. And they're curious. And you just wait. Just sit there. And have the safety clicked off so there's no surprising noises right before the shot. You're just ready to go, and they'll face you. They'll stand there. They're curious. They'll come up and swing their big head around, and they'll just look you square in the face, and they'll hold still for a long time. And it's great. That is how it happens. That's the time to make the kill, and you shoot them in the brain. Not just in the head. You must hit brain. And to do that, it's the same notion with the pig. It's forehead. It's not between the eyes. If you hit between the eyes, there's no brain there. You're just hitting sinus. And now you just have a mad cow.
Yeah.
And for whom no fence is a barrier.
That's true.
It's over. They can clear anything. They become impala.
They look like deer.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
And if they can't clear it, they can run through it. So you really need to aim at, again, 3 inches above the level of the eyes. And I say 3 inches, but really it's, I kind of look at the top of the head and down to the level of the eyes and right in between, in the middle line there. And I use a 22 Magnum. For cows, I do like a full metal jacket to get that penetration. But I've definitely shot them with jacketed hollow points. In a traveling class situation, I've even shot them with a 22 revolver.
Oh, wow. That's right.
Do they make a 22 WMR revolver? Someone will know the question of that. They must.
Okay. Yeah.
But I think it was just a 22, and I only mentioned that a 22 long rifle because I don't think I've ever heard of a 22 WMR revolver. Oh, no, they do both. They switch out the doodly, the rotary.
Okay.
The transmission on a handgun? It's a revolver. They can switch it out to shoot long rifle or WMR. And that's what I've used before when I go on traveling jobs. usually it's a little surprise, right. I'll give the whole slaughter speech. We're talking in front of the cow, 20 people looking at me. And I'm like, all right, I'm ready for the kill. And I go to get the gun and someone hands me a revolver. I'm like,
Even though we kind of told him ahead of time,
we're doing this, are we?
Yeah.
Okay. Which is fine. I just have more experience with a rifle. So.
Yeah.
And I like having the sights further apart. I feel like it's a more stable aiming platform than a revolver, which I think takes a little more skill. But again, not too much, because usually you're as close as possible. But without spooking the cow. So what was I talking about? So that's the round. 22 WMR. Full metal jacket is nice. I've done it with jacketed hollow points, and that works fine.
Okay.
A 22 long rifle will drop any cow.
Yeah.
You just must place it perfectly.
Yeah.
And I would use full metal jacket, high velocity rounds with a 22 long rifle.
Okay.
And so you hit them in the brain, and it is quite amazing with a cow. I mean, it's lights out instantly, and their feet, they go airborne for a split second. Their feet tuck up to their body, and they are floating in air. And then they hit the deck.
That's right. I've heard it because I've been outside of a trailer when you did one, and I was just shocked at the thud. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a big sound.
You get some velocity.
Yeah.
Because they're falling, actually.
Yeah.
With nothing
They're
underneath
not just
them.
leaning and plopping. It's like a big
boom.
Bam. Yeah.
And so they hit the deck, and they usually will roll onto their side. Stand opposite the humongous legs, because they will have pretty intense death throws, and with all that muscle, they will kick you right off your feet. So you stand opposite the legs always. Don't even get near the legs.
Yes.
No restraining. Don't restrain the cow. Just and you can stick them two ways. You can find the brisket, the sternum, basically, and you can go right in there and make a 12-inch cut up the neck.
Up the neck.
Up the neck, and you're just to one side of the trachea.
Okay.
You'll see the trachea. Everything's huge and obvious on a cow.
Wait, the trachea is going to the lungs.
That's right, but you're cutting up just to right next to it.
Okay.
As you go up, you'll see the trachea, and you could even see the carotid and jugular arteries. Usually in that moment, it's things are going on, so you're not looking, but if you do, you can lift them up and just cut them.
Wow.
And you'll get this huge effusion of blood. Usually the way I don't stick them that way, bleed them out. I do it by right behind the jawline, just like lamb or goat.
Okay. Right.
I actually step over their head, again with my other foot to the back of the cow, not by the front legs. And with the back of my leg, I pull their head so that they're extended. Their whole neck is exposed, and I just go right behind their jaw.
You open it up.
Just open it up all the way, and it's more catchable that way.
That's right.
You can catch blood that way.
It's like a waterfall.
It's a couple gallons of blood. And
in a matter of seconds,
yes,
really.
Yeah. It just flows out instantly.
Yeah.
And, a lot of guys, and then you just wait. There'll be convulsions, and you want to wait till they are good and over before you begin skinning, because they'll kick you with a sharp knife in your hand, and that's not good. So some guys can expedite the convulsions with a rod, a spinal rod. That's this semi-flexible thing. Right where you cut for the bleed out, just behind the jaw, is also right where the atlas vertebrae is, which is the last vertebrae that holds onto the skull. And if you go right down to bone, all you have to do is hyperextend the head a little bit, and you can cut the head right off. You'll expose, just with your knife, no sawing involved, you'll expose the spinal cord in doing that. And guys will have a rod, and you can actually shove that down the spinal canal, where the canal of the spinal cord runs in the spine. And it's long. It's like 36 inches long. And pull it out. And what that does is it really shuts down the convulsions.
It scrambles them.
Because it's autonomic, the convulsions. It's not coming from the will, if a cow could be said to have a will.
Yeah.
They're not choosing to make those moves.
Yeah.
It's
not them fighting.
Right. Yeah, it's random. It's autonomic.
Yeah.
I think it's the same impulse that rips your hand off of a hot wood stove before you choose to.
Yeah.
Right? It's just messages going from the nerves to the spinal cord and back, not all the way to the central processing unit in the brain.
Okay.
And so you kind of scramble that with the rod.
Yeah.
And then you can go right into skinning. I don't have one of those. Just incidentally, that's people have that.
Have you ever heard of people killing a cow without a gun? Like just, you're right next to them and you slice their throat, kind of like a lamb.
Yeah.
I mean, not that you would be able to lay it down, but...
No. Yeah, I mean, that's kosher and halal. It's done today.
They do that with cows?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that.
They have, depending on the technology available to them, in places like the United States, kosher halal slaughterhouses for beef will have huge chutes that completely restrain the entire body of the animal.
Oh.
So they walk into this thing and their head pops out one end of it, and they're utterly contained. Mm-hmm. And some of them like spin the cow on its side.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
And then they just do one slice.
Uh-huh.
And the cow bleeds out that way. The older way was knocking. I mean, that's still actually the verb that we use for the kill of a cow is knocking. If you're working in a small slaughterhouse and you're the killer that day, you're knocking. You're doing the knocks that day. Okay. Which usually today in a slaughterhouse is a captive bolt gun. Still, cow has to be in something of a chute. In some way, it has to be restrained so you can rest it directly on their forehead with contact and pull the lever and drop them that way. That's what I like about the rifle and the on-farm kill is there's no restraint. It is from contented, maybe mildly curious cow to dead cow instantly in the flash of a rifle. Yeah. And just cutting. So knocking was the way. And that was, a stout hammer, a sledge, even they had specifically designed ones with a bit of a protrusion on one side. And usually the knocker is standing above the cattle. So the cattle would come in, and he's standing, his feet are on a deck that is sturdy, and it's about, eye height of the cow, so that he can do this really perfect swing right down, boom. And he hits him right where the bullet would go, which is lights out. It is as effective as a bullet if you are perfectly accurate, just like a bullet.
Yeah.
Oh.
Uh-oh. Okay. Well, why don't you talk about hanging really quick and our approach to hanging and how it's different. I'll be right back.
Yeah. The other mechanisms that they would have used would have been a ring in a wall. And you can still see these in a lot of old slaughterhouses where in the masonry of the wall is cemented a bolt that comes out and is connected to a ring, a steel ring, and it's lower. And all the cows would be harnessed when they come into the slaughter chute. And with the harness on their head, they would and the rope coming from it, they would thread the rope through the ring. One guy pulls on the ring, and that lowers the cow's head down. And he can't quite pull it, and it's a way to still the head, and then they can deliver the knock, death blow that way. A lot of the rings used to be in the floor, also. Get the cow's head way down low, to provide a more accurate, swift, and powerful swing with the killing hammer. So that's slaughter. And after the bleed out, it's time to side the beef. And I've done this in so many contexts. A lot of guys have these neat little structures, these little fabricated metal. They look like L metal, but they're a larger dimension. And, tube steel or something. And it's a little frame that's just in the shape of an L. And, it could be just like 8 inch and they're about 5 feet long or less, and I've seen many different versions of it. But basically, you need to roll the cow on its back to start skinning, and these things hold it there. I've used 4x4s. Just look around the farm. All farms have a pile of scrap wood sitting there. All farms have random cinder blocks scattered about. I know this because I have found them on all farms. Because I use them. It just happened, it's necessary. I haven't rigged up my own little support system to keep the beef on its back. And you can use those. You want to position them one next to the shoulder and one next to the pelvis, to the hips. But really the shoulder will almost do all of it. And you pull the beef up, wedge it on one side, and maybe almost get it to tip all the way back the other side and wedge that side. And now you've got the cow laying flat on its back and legs up in the air. And you can start the skinning. I like to take the head off right away. And so that's easy, especially if you did the bleeding cut right down just behind the jawline. You just hyperextend that neck and nick only meat with your knife. And note, with due admiration, the thickness of the hide on the top of the neck where it meets the head. Incredible. 1/2 inch thick the hide is there. Really amazing. Amazing skin. So you can take the whole head off, and the head is one of those things that is an extravagant harvest that is lost. I think as a result of law in this country, if the cow is over 30 months old, you can't keep the head at all. And that's a bummer, because the head is amazing. And that has to do, again, with the BSE, the mad cow disease. And it seems misguided to me, because on a home farm, no small-scale cattle raiser is doing anything. I guess they can't assume that, can they? But that would result in mad cow disease, namely feeding meat to their cow. Not happening. So they cut off the head. I cut off the head just back there, and then I like to skin it and harvest the tongue and keep the head. The head has lots of meat on it. Try to keep as much of the lips with the little finger doodles on them as you can as you're skinning. Lip and lengua tacos are like my favorite. Well, cabeza, tacos de cabeza, right? That head meat, oh man, it is so good. At the very least, you can make stock from the head. Huge harvest there. And then you go to skinning, and I'm going to go ahead and recommend videos for that. I can describe it here, but this is a verbal description, and what one needs is a visual demonstration. Dare I say a hands-on class, which we have done and could do again. But to really skin a cow, it's the term that they use is siding. You side a beef. And basically, it's kind of what it sounds like. You liberate the hide from around the 4 feet, so it's draping down. And then you go down to the belly, and you cut a seam all the way up the center, and then you side the beef. You're cutting it off the sides. And it's a very efficient way to do it, because you're able to remove the hide in big swaths, about the length of your knife almost. And that's a skill, Don't even bother with a dull knife. But you'll get it. And what you're trying to do is a similar thing that you do when you de-hide a lamb or a goat. And that is retain the fel. So the twitchy muscle that causes the whole side of a cow to jump and twitch when there's a fly on it, to flick off the fly, you would do that. That muscle is just under the skin. You want to keep that on the meat, on the flesh, on the carcass. And it's a delicious muscle, by the way. I think some people call it mouse meat. Does that make sense? I'm starting to forget. There's so many names for everything, but I know in Argentina it's the matambre, which is kind of a conjunction of kill hunger, right? Mata, hambre. And because it is very rich and delicious, so hold on to that. And that will be on the carcass. You want to preserve that through your skinning. And there is one guy who I recommend as a good source for, let Not going to work, is it? I want to look it up for you because he's the man. And he's so quick at it, which is nice because that means it only takes you like 10 minutes to watch one of his videos. But he's got a beautiful skinning video. Siding beef. He does this a lot. Very good. Very skilled. And he is in New Zealand, I believe. And many of you already know who I'm talking about. He's got beef slaughter videos. I promise you I can find it. Come on. But every move he makes is hyper efficient, which means he's usually doing two things with one motion. It's pretty awesome. And this is all on-farm slaughter. And it's pretty neat. You can see that his farmers, most of them, at least the ones that they film, they have a good setup for him. Very powerful hoses. Sometimes he's on concrete and kill pens, which is really nice. But he shows up there and he does this with a winch and a hoist coming out the back of the truck like I have. If you're doing this at home, it is well within the range of possibility for you to rig up a gibbet, right? Just post beam with buttresses and braces. You want it to be like, a solid 15 feet off the ground, the beam, because cows are extremely long. And you need to have room for like a cable and a chain hoist that you might be using to lift up that much weight. And you want them to be real far apart so you can get around that critter while you're skinning it. If you're going to do it in a home setup, you would probably want to think about being able to drop the cow right underneath where you're going to hang it for skinning, to complete skinning and evisceration, because once they're down, they're down. And unless you have a good sizable tractor, they're not going anywhere. They're not moving. Even with me, I have a winch on my truck, but it comes off at kind of a funky angle. There's only a small spectrum of where my winch can reach. And so I have to really calculate where I drop a cow to ensure that I can drag it to my truck with my winch. And that is not a small thing. So keep that in mind.
How many people do you know you would say truly share your back to the land values? Or your passion for home-scale craft meat curing? Or simply love the multifaceted beauty of a good meal as obsessively as you do? Maybe a handful? At farmsteadmeatsmith.com, we've created an online community of hundreds of omnivores from around the world and a platform for them to learn from and inspire one another. In addition to our major semi-annual hands-on educational event, The Family Pig, here at our Pacific Northwest homestead, over at farmsteadmeatsmith.com, we host a purely digital membership program with an archive of film and textual resources years deep now for you to dive deeper into your food journey with. And both our classes and online program include access to our private community Facebook page for your continued education and fellowship. We've been told that our classes are life-changing and the membership program unparalleled in quality and quantity. To get a taste of our education, search farmsteadmeatsmith.com and our YouTube channel for our free films, conversations, and downloads. Explore how we and other meatsmiths across the globe may best come alongside you, putting the knife in your hand, article by article, and comment thread by comment thread, and can support you in building your home around the harvest. Please head to farmsteadmeatsmith.com today.
And I would recommend for you these videos. I just found them and literally, like, you can copy his every move and it will actually be really awesome. So it is Nick Kirsten Vukocevic. I don't know how to say it, but it's Vukejevich. Home kill. Nick Kirsten Vukocevic. It's good stuff. So especially for siding beef, for siding. And I also, I tend to split cattle the same way he does too, and similar evisceration. If you're doing this at home, it is well within the range of possibility for you to rig up a gibbet, right? Just post beam with buttresses and braces. You want it to be like, a solid 15 feet off the ground, the beam, because cows are extremely long. And you need to have room for like a cable and a chain hoist that you might be using to lift up that much weight. And you want them to be real far apart so you can get around that critter while you're skinning it. If you're going to do it in a home setup, you would probably want to think about being able to drop the cow right underneath where you're going to hang it for skinning, to complete skinning and evisceration, because once they're down, they're down. And unless you have a good sizable tractor, they're not going anywhere. They're not moving. Even with me, I have a winch on my truck, but it comes off at kind of a funky angle. There's only a small spectrum of where my winch can reach. And so I have to really calculate where I drop a cow to ensure that I can drag it to my truck with my winch. And that is not a small thing. So keep that in mind. You skin the beef and you begin the evisceration. You skin most of it except for a strip along the back, right? And the skinning is incremental. As you're skinning, you're basically peeling away the hide and hoisting the cow up gradually as you go. Because it's such a huge animal, you can't just hoist the whole thing up and begin skinning. You have to do it incrementally where you can reach it. And so really the skin is just attached to a thin part of the back by the time you've done most of the skinning of the cow on the ground. And while it's sort of halfway hoisted, but before it's completely vertical, cut the sternum with your saw. And that will allow the free dumpage of all the guts. And I mention this point because the guts are something to be reckoned with. It's very easy to underestimate them. You think, I've gutted animals before. We'll just pull the guts out. It's like, nah. On a beef cow, and I only say this from experience because I have underestimated these things. The guts are half of its live weight. So let's even pick a small cow, an 800-pounder. You have 400 pounds of guts. Is she okay?
She's okay.
Were you neglected in there? In your red dress? Can nobody watch a baby around here?
Well, the trouble is my mom couldn't come over.
Oh.
Today for the recording. Her back is out.
Okay.
So my dad came over, which made me a little nervous.
Yeah.
Because he's great, but 6 kids, I don't know. And so I asked my sister to come too. And, things fall through the cracks.
Like babies, for example?
Like babies, yeah.
Fall through the cracks and off the couches.
The 5-year-old picked up the baby, set her on the couch, and I think maybe walked away.
Oh, that's not right.
And so there was a little fall down.
Oh, good thing you're made of rubber.
But she...
You doing okay? She really wants to suck on the mic.
You made it. Yeah, maybe I'll let her. Just so she feels a little better.
Sorry about that, lady-o.
Yeah, she's okay.
So, I was just saying it's easy to underestimate the girth and weight of the guts of a cow. So, cut the sternum before the cow is vertical, because you won't be able to when 'tis vertical. Know what I'm saying?
Oh, yes.
Because the guts will be pushing on it, and it'll be too easy to nick the gut sac, the paunch, the omasum, the big one, with your saw, because it'll be pushing right on it. So while the cow is half hoisted, saw the sternum. And then even with your knife, make sure you get all the way through the xiphoid process, which is the little flap of cartilage at the end of the sternum, and even a little bit through the diaphragm, which is the thin membrane between chest cavity and guts. That way, as you go up, you finish the cut through the belly and connect it with the cut that you made through the sternum, guts will cascade out.
They will all fall.
They will all fall. The offal will all fall. And which is essential because you're not going to be able to lift it because it's half the weight of the cow.
That's right.
So you can't lift it up and out like you do with a pig or a lamb.
Yes.
They will just all slip right out. And, if you want to slow it down a little bit, it's possible. You can slow it down. it's not like it's going to just dump out immediately. You still have to free up the rectum and pull it out. Everything is still connected to the spine. And as it's coming out is when I harvest stuff. That's when I can get the liver out of there. And you need 2 hands for all of this. The liver is, it's huge. It's huge. You can get the liver out of there. You can get the caul fat out of there. Leave the kidneys in the suet in there.
Distracting.
Are you exploring the microphone? That's kind of nice. And yeah, and it'll all fall out.
And then, have you gotten to the heart and the lungs yet?
And they will come out too. I've never used. There is a neat little thing called a weazened rod that people use while the cow is still down. After you've skinned the neck, you find the esophagus. And the weazened rod is a long piece of metal that curls. I can't see my hands. That curls at the end. A long rod that's got a curl in it.
Okay.
Curl. And you get the esophagus, and you put the ring, the curl on it, and then you ram it up all along the esophagus. And what you're doing is liberating it from its fascia attachment to the trachea and to other things in there. You're freeing it up, mostly to avoid a burp. Sometimes the cow can burp partially digested rumen contents.
Yeah.
Never actually happened to me because I think I get to it in time. There's not a lot of pressure built up, but it does make it easier for the guts to just slip out, and things aren't quite hung up. So I think you're doing more than liberating the esophagus. You're breaking some other things in there that the guts slip out a little with a little less effort. So. Yeah, and the lungs will all come out down low, and the beef heart. I get those things out by pushing down, unlike other animals where you pull up. And now you've got this huge animal hanging, no guts, and a bit of hide on the back, basically just attached to a thin layer of the back. And if you pull on the hide, you have to pull out, not down. And you'll see how heavy that hide is.
Okay.
You're messing with our sound lady.
A little too much. Okay, yeah.
And pull out. So horizontally, you walk back and then you give it a jerk, and then the cow will swing away from you as you pull back. You want to coincide those two movements, and you'll strip off a good percentage of the hide. You might just have to knife to finish right around the neck, but if you get real good at that, that'll take the whole thing off. Now you've got a beef carcass, and this is where you split it. And I mentioned Nick, a YouTube home slaughterman in New Zealand that I like, that I recommend to everybody. And I have split cows the same way he does, and it's a good way to go. It's actually, it's a combo, Therese. And you knife all the way down the spine, but to one side of the feather bones. So the spine has spinal processes sticking up off of each vertebrae, and they're about 1/8 of an inch to 3/16 thick, very thin. And you just ride your knife right up against them on one side, deep. So your knife is hitting each vertebrae at the tip, and it's right up against the feather bones on one side. And that's where you're going to be splitting the beef. And I do like to start the split up high through the coccyx, the rear end vertebrae that lead out to the tail. I like to start that with the saw. And my good old Packer saw will do that. Simple, the same saw I use in here. And once I get through those, then I can come in with the cleaver. And cleaving is really a matter of, because we've cut through the flesh to one side of the feather bones, that's the path we're going to follow with the cleaver. And that lines you up with less bone than if you were trying to split the beef dead center and split each feather bone, that might be impossible.
Okay.
Definitely awesome
You'd go
to
through
attempt, but
several saw blades.
like I've chipped cleavers on beef bone. On an old enough cow, it's super dense.
Okay.
So, so I just stay to one side of it.
Okay.
All the way down. And I still chop from the belly side of the cow. All the way down. And you've got two sides. And then you have a bit of a puzzle on your hand. Because now you've got two sides, and you want a quarter in the field so that your beef will fit in a standard walk-in. Some walk-ins can handle a whole side, but that's 12 feet. I don't know, 10 feet. It's very tall. Most walk-ins aren't that tall, because they also have to accommodate a trolley system and a rolling hook. So you actually need to hang stably the beef as it's hanging in two sides. So it's not going anywhere. Free of the winching mechanism, whether that be your chain hoist or your winch. So they need to be secured. They're hanging. That way the winch is free to come down. Are you replying to the computer chime? The winch is free to come down, and then you can hook the winch to another gambrel that's attached to the four quarters. And you want to get those hooked in first. And the place that you do that is you leave one rib on the aft quarter, on the hind quarter. And so you need to go in between the second and third rib from the last rib, counting from that direction. You go, you count 1, 2. And then you go right in there, in between second and third. And that's where you can slip a gambrel or a single hook. You can do one side at a time. And put the hook in, then cut.
I've seen so many amateurs.
I know.
Start cutting, and the bottom quarter is
boom,
gonna go on the ground.
In the dirt. Fortunately, if we're around, we usually catch that. But
Hook the meat first.
Yes. And then you got 4 quarters. And 1 quarter is liftable by a man.
Really?
You're hugging it and it's floppy. So the weight is okay as long as you can stay under it.
Yeah.
But it's the floppitude that's really tricky.
Okay.
And so you can't be shy, it's all on the legs, and it's a hug. Get your good gable grip or something. And you're hugging it, and it's it's here. There's grease. You're covered in fat, and I don't like the hug. I don't like to lift the sides. You're all
dirty too.
Because I'm covered in grease.
Yeah.
And I spray myself off in my clown rubber suit and everything, but still, you're still getting stuff on it.
Yeah.
And so I like to. My whole system is no touchy. I don't lift it. Once it's quartered. Everything I roll one side at a time back into the truck, and I can bring it here.
And is it still kind of not sketchy, but sketchy with your truck? I mean, how beefed up is our steel to handle big beef? So
far, so good. Yeah, I mean, it does. What works the hardest is the winch, and it's a 9,500 pound winch. But the thing about winches is I don't, I feel like that's the max weight that they put on there, that this winch can do that on a good day, and then it'll be dead after that. I don't know. Because even my winch struggles on a standard beef. I can hear it. It's working, draining the battery. So if you're going to use an electric winch for this, which I recommend, just go huge, go way overkill. Get a 12, 15,000 pound winch that won't even notice it through gear reduction and stuff.
When you're killing animals, it's a good rule of thumb that there's no such thing as overkill.
Yeah, and especially when it comes to beef, your greatest challenge is managing all of that weight.
Yeah.
And that is one thing that you don't want to break down on you, because you don't want to just, it's all right. Hey, we'll just lift it. Because it's one thing to get a quarter of beef off of a hook that's hanging. It is another to lift a quarter of beef up off the ground.
Yeah.
That is a whole nother feat.
It's demoralizing.
Yeah.
Because it's dirty. Yeah. You've been working real hard. So did you go through basically evisceration, skinning and evisceration?
I did. I'm not going to go too far into skinning because...
Okay, we'll talk about that in another episode.
Yeah, it's better to have a 3-dimensional demonstration. That's why I recommend Nick's videos. He's the most efficient skinner I've seen.
Or our videos on our membership.
On beef skinning?
I guess not beef skinning.
Yeah, it is different because you can't fist a beef.
Oh.
You can't fleece it like a lamb
or
a goat. It doesn't work.
And we'll get into that in another video too.
Yeah, it's too heavy.
Okay.
The hide is too heavy and it clings too tightly to the body of the cow.
Yeah.
It doesn't work. So it's siding and then pulling.
Yeah. Did you talk about hanging?
Yeah, not yet. So that's the next step. Mm-hmm. And dry aging beef has a lot of, there's lots of really technical knowledge that surrounds it, but really it's just letting the beef rot without bacterial spoilage.
Yeah.
That's what it is. It's enzymes instead of bacteria. Mm-hmm. So when bacteria decomposes animal flesh, it produces slime and gas and toxins and nasty things to outcompete other bacteria. And it's grotesque. When enzymes do it, they're just catalysts for metabolism. They're not like living things that are pooping and farting. So, and they're in the meat. They're ready to go. Everything comes ready-made with its own little profile of enzymes to decompose the body. And beef have it. And, she's getting a little welt right there. Yeah. So the enzymes are released immediately. They start doing their thing. Rigor mortis sets in. All the muscles are really tight and tough. And the aging and the enzymes really kind of undo that, and they loosen the muscles up again. And they break it down. They're decomposing the flesh without spoilage.
Yeah.
So basically, with you can deduce then what you need for a good aging climate, which is one that does not encourage bacteria. That's all it is. You can age meat anywhere where you can keep bacteria in control. And you do that with 2 mechanisms, temperature and humidity. So temperature keeps the bacteria almost totally asleep. Only a few really very active bacteria can do their damage at 35 degrees Fahrenheit. But you can, the more important step and the one that really prolongs the time that you can age is humidity. Because again, what do all bacteria need but moisture? They need water. They need free water just sitting around. And so if you have a dry place, even if it's a little on the warm side, if it's dry enough, it won't rot. Like never ever rot. You could technically turn all 4 quarters into jerky, right? Over a year in just a hyper dry walk-in. It would be kind of a waste, but it's possible. And it's that dryness, provided the bleed out was good. I don't know, that's a hypothetical. But anyway, so dryness, that's really key. And, it's a balance to do a really fine dry age. You don't want it to be too dry. So, I think 70% humidity is probably a good thing to shoot for. But again, see, I don't know what I've dry aged meat at. I hang it on my porch and let it grow mold blooms and stuff. What I go by if I'm aging beef for someone else is I just check on it. And if you're getting mold relatively quickly and any slime, it's too moist in your walk-in, or in your cooling situation. So throw a dehumidifier in there. And you will watch. And you can knock down the mold. Remember, mold doesn't penetrate and fester. It's just on the surface. You can knock it down just with a wet rag and or your hand. I've done it with my hand. And put a dehumidifier in there. And it will severely inhibit the spread of the slime and the mold. The slime is bacteria. It's a spoilage bacteria, and you will notice it focused on places where the slaughter could have been a little cleaner.
Oh.
So where slime happens is around the feet, or on the pin bones where the hooves have been taken off, because slaughtermen tend to touch those with their bare hands, and they're down there in the muck and the mire, and they're not considered. It's just through some of the processing through hooks that are not clean. They introduce bacteria there first, and so you'll notice slime there first.
Okay.
But again, that slime does not mean rotted. It's not putrefied. It's not spoiled. Neither does the mold mean that at all. It just means it's a little moist when you're walking. And so there's really no limit to how long you can dry age.
Right.
It'll just get more tender, and even the enzymes are releasing flavors that were previously undetectable and locked away in some other form. But the enzymes break them down, and now you can actually taste them. So aging is totally essential. I mean, it actually makes the beef more tender and flavorful.
Yeah.
It's really good.
Yeah. Well, and just to give some people some reference point, the longest that anyone here on the West Coast in America will dry age, if you can call it dry aging, they'll hang it for 2 weeks, 14 days.
And that's
a rule, pretty much.
Yeah.
According to like the Niche Meat Processors Forum that I was part of several years ago, no one will.
I thought it was 28 days. Some of them do 28.
Well, on the East Coast, they will.
Oh.
Yeah. I think it's regional. I think that maybe we're just a little behind here on the West Coast.
Yeah.
East Coast is a little more comfortable with that prolonged aging. Aging proper, maybe.
Yeah.
They're really intentionally trying to age it.
Yes.
Of course, in Britain, there really is no limit. It's like at least 30 to 40 days.
Yeah.
But really, it's just, and so here, when we do an occasional beef for a customer, which really we only do less than a handful a year, you'll age it for 4 weeks, and then we just need walk-in space.
That's right.
And so that's what we need to cash in on this job. So we're like, okay, let's get it, and it has a good layer of mold, good layer. And that's with care too. Like what's the inside steak? Is it the hanger or the
hanger and skirt?
And the skirt, and maybe some of the flank too. You'll take off before 4 weeks because they're done. They've like reached they're dry.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so we'll call those good at a week or two.
Yeah.
And then you'll let the rest of it hang, and you might peel off a little more.
Yeah.
Throughout that month period, but economically speaking. The other custom processors, they have to move product, so they don't let it go longer than 2 weeks.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. A lot of it's just walk-in space management.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now she found my headphones.
Therese, you're such a problem child.
Yeah, it's so funny.
Oh, she wants to suck on it, I guess.
Oh, okay.
Like everything.
It's cute.
She's teething.
Yeah. She's teething and she fell.
It's a hard life.
Yeah, so we age for longer than most people in our region.
For our own beef, for our own family, I push everything. I age it as long as bovinely possible.
Yeah.
So several months. If it's dry enough, you can do it indefinitely. You can age it for a year. It just needs to be dry.
It's true.
It'll be fine.
Yeah.
So it's that's the breakdown. It's aging is rotting without bacterial action.
Yeah.
Or unnoticeably minimal.
Yeah.
Did I say that right? Yeah, you can't even notice it.
Yeah.
And you would notice it, fortunately. Bacteria announces itself in smells and slimes and gross things. But you just want it to be enzymes. And that reminds me of a cow that we butchered. It was a dairy cow just for family, and it was 11 years old, a Jersey. Some of the best beef we've ever eaten. aged for just over 30 days.
Yeah.
The flavor was unreal. The older animals have more flavor. This is just a fact. The collagen is more developed, so they're a little more tough. They've been using their sinew and their muscles a little longer.
Yeah.
But the flavor is out of this world. It's incredible. And the tender muscles are still tender. You might just have to denude them a little bit more. Remove a little more silver skin.
Yeah.
Than you would with a young one.
She's gearing up again. She's back to life. Back to her normal self.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we cure beef a lot too.
Uh-huh.
I've dry salted it just like bacon, and not all beef dry salts evenly. The fatter stuff is better for dry salting. Mm-hmm. There's a Spanish beef version. It's like a prosciutto. It's a dry salted, prolonged aged beef round. Mm-hmm. And it's thin. They, aged like a year and a half or more, and you slice it thin, just like jamon.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
And it's very good. So all of the curing options are available to you. Bresaola is probably one of the most common. And I've done a lot of beef that way. Just coarse sea salt, bottle of wine, crushed garlic in like a Pyrex or a bus tub, depending on the size of the cut. Mm-hmm. And let it sit in there for a while. Mm-hmm. And then take it out and hang it up to dry and age. And all of that is just as it would be for pork. Mm-hmm. It's very simple. Water is water, salt is salt, and beef is beef. You want to bind and remove water. Mm-hmm. That preserves it. Please don't pull the computer down, Therese.
Well, we're almost at 2 hours here. I think we've still got enough we could talk about, but let's save that for another episode. We'll talk about cutting. Yeah. Cutting, because I know you can talk a lot about methodology.
Right.
In cutting beef. Depending on your continent.
One of the unfortunate things you get, even if they do stretch themselves in dry aged beef for 28 days here, is that they remove the entire exterior of the carcass, which will remove most of the fat that you want. And because it'll have some mold on it. Mm-hmm. And it's not necessary for home consumption. You don't need to do that. I do it totally as a matter of taste. Or just leave it all on, especially on big roasts. Yeah. I like to leave it on.
Well, let's call that good today, and we will come back with another episode on cutting and cooking and curing beef, maybe.
Yeah.
But killing and hanging beef, and we talked a lot about grass-fed and the husbandry of beef and how that affects the flavor.
Yeah.
Genetics. Thanks so much for joining us for another podcast, and we'll come back in another 2 weeks with another one. Remember, we've got pork shares for sale. Get those orders in by February 6th, and that'll be our pork share run for the year until 2020.
Yeah.
And I think that's it. Come to the Family Pig if you can.
Do.
It's going to be so much fun.
Yeah.
Therese will be there. And her welt will be gone by then. Thanks again, everyone. Have a good rest of your month. You can receive updates on all our brand new content as it's released by signing up for our email newsletter. Free download of Brandon's thoughts on meat cookery included. Go to farmsteadmeatsmith.com and sign up on the homepage. Thanks again for listening, and keep in touch.